Welcome to East Meets West, and you know him, of course, as the host of the podcast Talking Politics and Religion Without Killing Each Other. He's also the second most important person to hail from Freehold, New Jersey. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Corey Nathan.
And he is the 7-time Emmy-winning broadcast journalist born and raised in beautiful Los Angeles, Rick Garcia. Rick, nice to see you, man.
Hey, Corey, good to see you, buddy. I'm curious to know, after what happened over the weekend in the NFL, is it the end of a dynasty? The great Patrick Mahomes, and I still contend that he's going to be the guy to break all of Tom Brady's marks when it comes to winning Super Bowls. I think it's still going to happen, but he blew out his knee on Sunday in a game that in the final 2 minutes against the Chargers that also meant eliminating the Chiefs mathematically from the playoffs. This is a team that has won 4 Super Bowls now, 3 of those thanks to I think the combination of Andy Reid, his head coach, and Patrick Mahomes, who I think is the best quarterback in the game right now. Are they done?
You know, you caught me mid-sip. So first of all, I thought you were going to ask me about what happened this weekend, me being back in Jersey and all, because that was the most significant news.
Something happened? Let's start with, go ahead.
No, I was just back in Jersey.
This is why we need to meet before we do these shows.
That's right. You know, I was back in the old country seeing my buddies back there. But
okay.
Do
they remember you, by the way?
Barely. I don't speak the language anymore.
Yeah.
I went from Newark Airport to my friend's house in Flemington, and I said, "Yeah, I took the 78." He said, "Whoa. Have you been in California that long where you're calling 78 the 70?" I said, "Yeah, I just did that, didn't I?" Anyway, okay. As far as Mahomes, you know what caught my attention?
What?
Is Tom Brady won 3 Super Bowls, and then if you remember what happened in 2008, he tore his ACL and he missed the whole season.
Blew out his knee, that's right.
Now, I don't think that Mahomes is going to miss the whole season. I would be surprised if he makes game 1 of next year. But this does a few things. One is Mahomes now has a much longer offseason to really reset. Not just Mahomes, but the Kansas City Chiefs have an entire offseason to reset. And in particular, if you look, I just looked at the last 5 years, let alone the last 10 or 12 years. They've been picking 30, 32, 28 was the lowest in the draft order they've chosen over the last 5 years. They're going to have a much better slot in this upcoming draft, which I think allows them to fill in some of these glaring holes that we now really see.
That's right. To retool what's going to happen with Travis Kelce, for example. And I agree. I think Mahomes is going to make game 1. He's that kind of competitor. It's a 9-month rehab, generally speaking, on average. These professional athletes, especially the NFL guys, they've been shortening that timetable year after year. I mean, it's almost like a competition for him. He's injured on Sunday, meets with the doctor on Monday, and late Monday, early Tuesday, he's having surgery and already beginning rehab, if you can believe that. Had to fix two ligaments in that knee. But I think I won't be shocked if he's ready for the first game.
Wow. You know, if what you're saying is accurate, 9 months puts us right around mid-August. I would be surprised if he played even a quarter of any of the preseason. Do they still have 3 preseason games next year?
They do, and none of this. Well, here's the thing. With Reid, he did play Mahomes in preseason. He enjoys doing that. You take a team like the Rams and Sean McVay, he will not play his starters in preseason. I think you give Mahomes a chance to sit out preseason. What does he need to learn?
I like their chances. I like their chances. They're a smart organization. They're an incredibly well-coached organization. And Mahomes' drive and competitiveness is unmatched in the NFL today. So I like his chances.
All right, let's hear it for the old guys.
Yes.
Old man Rivers.
I like it. Gives me hope. He's a grandpa.
Philip Rivers. They've been talking about him, as far as the Hall of Fame. And all of a sudden they're like, well, wait a minute, we're going to have to put a hold on that. Because the Indianapolis Colts picked up the old-timer who hasn't been on the field for 5 years. They insert him this previous NFL week into the starting lineup against the Seattle Seahawks, and he almost beat them. One of the best teams in the NFL, the Seahawks. Rivers almost beat them.
He almost beat them in a last-minute comeback, only to be surpassed by another last 30-second comeback. So I did like that first outing for Rivers. I love the fact that a 45-year-old old-timer is playing the game. So I'm a little torn on what my feel for this is. On the one hand, he had a pretty strong outing on 3 days of practice. He didn't set the world on fire, but 120 yards, 8 of 27, a touchdown, interception, but solid outing on 3 days of practice. So my question is, does he get better with more reps and more practice, or does he start to feel the ligaments? Does he start to feel the hits? Does he start to wear down in that much more of an accelerated pace based on the age?
Yeah. And by the way, this was a desperation move on the part of the Colts because they're trying to get into the playoffs. And that's something that the Colts haven't been talking about
Yeah.
much lately. So
Yeah.
my theory is I think there's a drop off. He threw a touchdown pass in this game. I'm kind of going with what you kind of started to lay out there, and that's he's going to feel it in his bones.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be painful for him. That's number one.
Yeah.
And Seattle didn't have a chance to game plan for a 44-year-old quarterback, by the way, because it was a last minute signing.
If this is the quarterback that we saw 5 years ago that should have been up for the Hall of Fame as we speak, then I like this Indianapolis Colts team more so than with Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I would have been, because if you remember a few weeks ago, I was not bullish on this Colts team's chances, but I do like a Rivers-led Colts team even more so. But that's the caveat is it the Rivers of 5 or 10 years ago?
No,
or a
it's not.
45-year-old grandpa?
It absolutely is not. Now you can hear other quarterbacks who are in their mid-40s saying, "Oh, I can do this." He was 18 for 27, 120 yards, and a touchdown and an interception. I hate to say it. I think it's going to go downhill from here.
Well, the other thing this got me thinking of is I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. All-time comebacks, like career comebacks. So the first one that I thought of was Jim Palmer. Do you remember Jim Palmer in the early 90s?
Pitcher for the Orioles, yeah.
For the Orioles. Did I say 49? Sorry. For the Orioles, after 66 and a half years off, tried to make a comeback, but what did he do? He pulled his hammy in his second exhibition game out. But there were others. I mean, MJ came back after a year and a half. Muhammad Ali was
probably the biggest and best, I think, comeback
3.5
performance
years.
after being in prison, right? For a
The
little
one
while,
that we don't remember, but that we read about, is the Ben Hogan comeback after that accident he almost died in that accident. Mario Lemieux also in NHL. I know you're not as big of an NHL fan as I am, but I mean, the guy survived cancer, the treatment's over several years, but
no, that was incredible. He's quite the golfer too. I don't know if you know that about Lemieux.
I didn't know that.
A lot of those hockey players are terrific golfers.
Oh, man, yeah.
But we digress.
Yeah.
We digress.
Sorry.
So the jury's still out on Rivers. We'll see what happens if they wind up going to the playoffs. This is going to be some story. Otherwise, I think he just disappears off into the sunset.
Man, we'll see. We'll see. It just resets the clock on his Hall of Fame. Do you think he's a Hall of Famer, by the way?
I think he is. I think he's got enough numbers. I mean, I think he's destined to wind up in there. So we go from old to new, something old, something new. Shedeur Sanders, everybody keeping an eye on this guy. Is he going to wind up being the biggest miss for teams that didn't draft him early, or did they know what they were talking about? Now, you and I talked last time he had a game. He performed very well against one of the worst teams in the NFL, the Tennessee Titans. Well, in his most recent game, he played one of the better teams, the Chicago Bears. He was 18 for 35, 177 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and they got hammered by the Bears.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
So the 3 interceptions is a big concern. The fact that he got sacked 5 times is a concern. This is a young man who has wheels, so he should have a better pocket sense to be able to avoid some of those sacks, and as we've been talking about from the beginning, the ultimate stat is the record itself. His completion percentage remains pretty pedestrian, hovering just over 50% in all 4 of his starts. So the only question I have, because I want to buy this stock, I really do. Yeah. For whatever reason, I have an affinity for the young man and the headwinds he's facing, at least in terms of his last name, and folks just have it out for him before he even gets started. So I'm rooting for him in a way. So the question I have is, was this more of a cold weather game? And if so, can he adapt over time to cold weather? Or is it just the fact that he got exposed by a really good team?
Well, and so for me, I think that your feeling is that going in that people had the wrong impression of him, and that the numbers really are what we should base things on. And for me, my concerns are he doesn't know how to say the right things. Again, if you're going to be the leader of a football team, You need to have people want to follow you. They'll follow you if you're winning, but if you're out there, pounding your chest like a rooster, and the numbers stink, or you get all excited and do a dance when you're down 31-7, but you were the one that scored a touchdown. Guys are not going to follow you. So for me, I want to see the maturation in the man, not just the player, because quarterbacks at this stage of the game, when they come to the NFL, it's a rude awakening. And so I'm not really diving into the numbers as deeply. I think he's going to need some time. I think I want to see what kind of man he becomes. Is he going to be the kind of guy that builds everybody up around him, makes everybody better around him, and that they want to run through a wall for him? That's his job as a quarterback. I will also say that if you're the Browns, what do you do? Like, do you go back to Gabriel? They've already said that they're going to keep Sanders in as the number one guy. You're paying Deshaun Watson a gazillion. He's available to start playing again. Do you want to look at him for 2 games? I think it's a tough choice for the Browns now.
I think you bring up some good points. The fact that his mouth gets ahead of him sometimes, but what I keep on remembering is this is what, a 22-year-old kid. I remember there was a moment when Geno Smith, way back in, I think it was 2013, when he was with the Jets, his rookie season, he wins his first game, or one of his first games. I forget if it was the first game or one of his first games. And there was this moment when he stood up on the bench where the players sit on the sidelines and raises his hands to the side as if he was the awaiting hero, as if he had already won 5 Super Bowls. And I remember, this kid is just not going to last.
Yeah.
But
you're talking about Geno Smith, right?
Geno Smith,
who, by the way, also dropped significantly in the draft.
He
Bit
did.
of an embarrassment as they would go to the green room looking at him, and as he dropped and dropped and dropped.
A chip on his shoulder, and then he grew up a little bit. By the time he gets to Seattle, we see a much different person, as well as a much different quarterback.
Yep, that's right.
So I'm keeping in mind that this kid's 20-nothing years old. So I'm giving a little bit of grace there.
And speaking of which, here's another example of somebody who may be going that same way in terms of not knowing how to be a leader, maybe because of youth. They had the Heisman Trophy was announced, of course, and the winner was Indiana's Fernando Mendoza. I think it was well deserved. Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia, who's been getting lots of publicity as a player, helping Vanderbilt become a team that is being noticed. He did not win it. He was one of the finalists. And then he after the decision was announced, he goes on social media and says, F all the voters. It's like, you're kidding me, right? Now, you can't tell me that every scout who was sitting in their chair when they heard this story, every NFL coach and general manager didn't sit up straight in their seat. I want to make the point that I'm being consistent on this, that same attitude that I think hurt Sanders. This kid Pavia, he's just put himself in a big hole. I mean, that's just a numbskull thing to do.
So I'm going to be a little inconsistent. Based on the grace that I've been wanting to give Shedeur Sanders, I don't give this kid any grace. But here's the thing. This is why. We're not going to get into politics and religion, but I'm a Christian. I read my Bible every day.
Yeah.
But there's a pet peeve of mine. Every time a microphone is put in front of this kid's face, he says, "Praise the Lord," cry, and he invokes the name of Jesus, and every time a microphone is in front of his face, and this is the character that's revealed. Now, there was something, even when he apologizes, whether it was later that day or the next day, there was something that was even more revealing. He talked about his lifelong dream. I forget exactly how he put it. His lifelong dream and coming up short. Wait a second, kid. I thought your lifelong dream is to win the national championship, not individual awards.
Right.
To win the Super Bowl, not individual, but this is your lifelong dream that you came up short. So there's something about praising God every time a microphone's in front of his face, and invoking the name of Jesus Christ. And yet I don't care that he cursed, by the way. Like, to me, I love, even as a Christian, I love a well-praised, especially being a Jersey guy from Jersey. I love a
sure.
So
those are verbs and adverbs and adjectives and when it comes to.
But the rest of it is the hypocrisy that I just can't stand.
Okay, so that I agree with you on that, but also just to give an example of how you're supposed to act in this case, you're right. He's thinking of an individual honor, right? That was at the forefront of his head.
This is where we drop in. This is where Individual you know what movement I'm referring to? Individual achievements.
Right. So then you get a guy like
Come
Matthew
on, Rick, hold
Stafford.
on, hold on.
Yeah,
Do you know
I'm
what movie
listening.
I'm referring to?
No, I don't.
Untouchables.
Okay. All right.
Come on.
Great movie, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry,
Great
man.
movie. I did not memorize the dialogue in that movie, though. I apologize. I, I will tell you, though, that then you go and to kind of juxtapose how it
Yeah,
should be is every time the Rams win a game now in the locker room, they have video of the victory speech, right?
yeah.
And his team is chanting MVP, MVP, and he's like, "Stop, knock it off. This okay, quit. You know, we've got goals in front of us, and our goals are to get the Super Bowl and win it." And that stuff's nice to hear, and they're chanting it at the stadium. He doesn't want to hear it, man,
Yeah,
because he knows his job is to help carry that team to the promised land.
yeah.
An MVP or Heisman Trophy winner or having the most stats in the league, that ain't it if you're a quarterback. That's just not it.
Not it. Not it. At some point, maybe I'll do my rendition of the De Niro
I,
soliloquy.
I would, great movie. What a great movie that was.
Individual
Untouchables, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Another Kevin Costner great movie, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give you your chance to pout. This is going to be your segment here. The Mets are, it's off season.
Yeah.
Season's over. Mets are still losing.
Oh my
They're
God.
still losing.
You're
What
killing
is
me.
what is up with your team here? You lose Edwin Diaz to the Dodgers. Pete Alonso says, "Hey, see you later" for the Baltimore Orioles. Corey, take it away. Is your team cooked already?
Okay. So, first of all, the winter is not over. There's a lot of winter left. Okay. Now, these are losses, but let's take each one individually. So, Pete Alonso, at this time last year, I honestly would not have minded if he took off in free agent. Yeah, there was a part of me I wanted to see him break the Mets home run record. That would have been great. But at this time last year, I was not convinced that he was our best option there. There were plenty of other options where we could have had a better defensive first baseman, maybe not replace all of the power historically that he was averaging over the first 5 years of his career, but certainly have some upside, especially after the year that Mark Vientos was coming off of. So at this time, I got to remember what I was thinking this time last year. I'm not going to fall into the trap of selling high because he definitely had a decent year, at least offensively this year. But still, you know, and then with the more recent signing, they got Jorge Polanco. The mistake that a lot of people are making are thinking that Jorge Polanco is replacing Pete Alonso. He's not replacing Pete Alonso. If anything, he's replacing Starling Marte, and that's an upgrade. Now, if we see, I don't know, a signing of somebody like Alex Bregman, granted he's a third baseman most of his career, but in the corner outfields, either way, he's going to be an upgrade defensively. Not that they're going to replace all that power, but I mean, that's one conversation. So let me see what else they have up their sleeve. Cody Bellinger, Kyle Tucker, or a trade, you know, that they have in the works. So that's just Pete Alonso. Edwin Diaz, yeah, I'll say his name this week. You know, listen, Devin Williams, I came loaded to bear, Rick. Come on. So Devin Williams.
I know. By the way, this is your therapy session. I
Thank
understand,
you.
but go on.
I got to get it all out, man.
You're laying on the couch. Let me continue. I feel like this feels like The Sopranos all of a sudden. But go ahead.
Devin Williams ain't nothing. He's not just some, you know, I don't know, some AA guy that they just got out of that they brought back after 6.5 years off. Like, you know, Devin Williams is about as proximate to Edwin Diaz as it gets in the entire major leagues. Their stats over the last 5 years. And listen, if the next 3 years over the course of Edwin Diaz's contract with the Dodgers, it doesn't look the same, then I'll eat crow. I'll happily eat crow. But I think Devin Williams, especially with the Mets, especially with their development system, he can have not only a bounce back year, but he can achieve what his peak was, and perhaps even achieve greater peaks than that. The other thing too is, again, the winter is not over yet. So are they going to pull in a Mason Miller? Are they going to trade for an Adrian Morejon? What else are they going to do to surround Devin Williams? So there was something that was very telling to me about them not fighting that hard for Edwin Diaz. If they really wanted him back, they would have done what they did 2 or 3 years ago when they signed him before he even became a free agent. So there was something very telling about that. And then here's the last thing, because I've thrown a lot at you just on these two players alone, is that with that $31 million that was given to Pete Alonso and the $23 million that was given to Edwin Diaz, that frees up. I know that Steve Cohen has a lot of money, but he's still a successful businessman for a reason. So you give me that, what is that, $54 million. There's a lot they can do with that money that they essentially that they freed up. So I still have a lot more, but I don't want to filibuster the whole show
No,
with
that's
all this.
okay. I have one question for you.
Yes.
Do you feel better?
No, I feel worse.
I was hoping that would help you get through the rest of the week, but I guess
No,
not.
no. I got a lot of battery acid that I've had to suck down this week.
All right. You ready to pop that culture?
Let's do it.
Pop that culture.
So, this next portion of the podcast is it's a little more difficult to talk about in light of it was a terrible tragedy, of course, that took place over the weekend involving director actor Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle. They were tragically murdered in their home, and their son is one of the suspects. And didn't want to spend time on the actual tragedy itself,
Yeah.
but this guy leaves us with a lot of art and a lot of moments in entertainment, thus the Pop That Culture segment, that are worthy of talking about. And I just want to give you a personal experience on my behalf of the opportunity that I had when I met Rob Reiner is a lot of, you'll see a lot of your local news and sports people in a lot of films. Here in Hollywood, especially here on the West Coast, it's not uncommon for them to call up a station and say, "Hey, can we have a Rick do bit in our movie?" So I've done a few of those, and one of them I did was for Rob Reiner, called "The American President," which was a wonderful flick with an amazing ensemble cast: Annette Bening, Michael Douglas, Martin Sheen, Michael J. Fox, Richard Dreyfuss, among others. An amazing cast, a really cool film. And in a moment, we're going to talk about our favorite Rob Reiner movie. One of the things I came away from that experience was how films should be produced the right way. First of all, he was a big sports fan. When we had the opportunity to have a few conversations, and by the way, I had lines in the movie, they were cut, but you'll see lots of cutaways of me in the movie toward the end when Michael Douglas gives his big presidential speech. He was the president in the movie. But a couple of things. Rob was a huge sports fan, especially boxing. Loved boxing. He's an East Coast guy through and through, and so. But one of the other things that I'd learned about him was from members of the crew. So members of the crew felt like they could approach me. They would watch me on local television, so they knew who I was. Much more approachable, right? Much easier to reach out to me than, say, Michael Douglas or Annette Bening, right? So they loved talking sports. And what I learned from a couple of members of the crew is what a wonderful guy that Rob was in terms of how the working process of creating a story, creating cinema was. One of those elements that they respected so much about him is that, these guys, they burn the candle at both ends in the film industry. I mean, they're working morning, noon, and night. They work their butts off in the film industry, the crew, the actors, the director, everybody. But he had this rule where he wanted his folks to get home even though it was going to be late, in enough time to have dinner with their families. He felt like if they felt like they just weren't being used up, for the movie making process, and that they knew that this guy running the show cared about them, that went a long way to them. That was one of the things that I got out of that was so cool. I know that you, and then we're going to get into what the things that he brought to us that were so enjoyable. But you said you had a story as well that from somebody who was a partner of his.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, somebody I've become even closer with in recent years, is a fellow named Jim Frederick. Jim, I believe, was the Castle Rock's first head of marketing. So he was a trailer editor and a creative director. And his first studio job was when they were forming Castle Rock. This is going back to the early days, Princess Bride, Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men. And Jim subsequently taught at Chapman University after a long stint at Warner Brothers, where he oversaw all the marketing for films like Harry Potter and just some great films over the years. Jim was telling me about his experience at Castle Rock. And he said not only was their approach to making movies very different, where they eschewed some of the traps that the studio system sort of forces people into, Very story driven. What's a story that we would be intrigued by, and how can we tell it in a quality way with quality writing, quality acting, quality production? But that commitment, that integrity also transferred to who they were as people, including Rob Reiner. He said the Rob Reiner that you saw in interviews, that was the genuine Rob Reiner. He was, whether you agree with his politics or not, he was a mensch. He was a true mensch. And Jim worked with Rob for many years. And he said that never went away, even when things got tough. So I didn't know Rob Reiner personally, but friends of mine did. And it really is a tragedy. But I think that where you're going to go next is we're talking about his films and what he left us with. So I'm curious what films stood out for you.
Well, so first of all, before he became a director and created all these amazing stories, he was probably
Meathead.
one of the most consequential shows in the history of television, All in the Family, with Carol O'Connor. Carol O'Connor, who was an extreme righty, and if you think about it in today's parlance,
Yeah.
and then you had the meathead,
Yeah.
Mike, who was played by Rob Reiner, who is an activist and was on the left, would have been considered an extreme progressive today. And if you think about it, that story plays so well today because of what's going on with our society politically. And it was really interesting to see how people could butt heads and still love each other.
Yeah.
And be in a family together, thus
Yeah.
All in the Family. A lot to be learned from that. But then he goes on and becomes a director
Yeah.
and creates some of the most amazing filmmaking of our generation. Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, which I
that's right,
still,
Stand
some
By
of my
Me.
buddies constantly talk about Princess Bride. This is Spinal Tap. Misery. People don't know
Yeah.
that he directed Misery. James Caan in that one, and that was quite a scary movie.
Kathy Bates. Yeah.
Kathy Bates, who was fantastic. A Few Good Men, when Harry Met Sally. Let's see, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones here as I go through the list. I mentioned to you The American President, which you truly happen to be a part of. Any others that I'm missing before we go on and talk about?
Even the ones that you mentioned, you know what's remarkable about those films? There are some that help us understand who we are. It's not just that we work certain lines into our vocabulary. Like, I mean, how many of us can quote, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die." Or when Harry Met Sally, I mean, how many dates did I go on in my late teens and early 20s hoping that we would, reenact?
Were people, did some of your dates scream at lunch?
That's right. That's right. Something along those lines. But iconic lines. You can't handle the truth.
Oh my
or the
gosh.
bucket list has now become part of our lexicon, part of how we think of how we shape our lives. So many of us think about the bucket list. But
So what's your favorite then? If you had to pick one.
So it's recency biased.
Okay, fair enough.
I love them all. I think when Harry Met Sally has a special place in my heart because a lot of guys and a lot of my friends that I graduated high school with, it helped us understand and imagine a trajectory for our lives in at least when it comes to romance and that sort of, that sort of thing. But I have
Billy Crystal, by the way, and Meg Ryan in that one, right? And the ultimate rom-com. Right.
Yeah, the ultimate rom-com.
The boys are from, women are from Mars, men are from Venus, or I may have that backward, but that idea basically.
So total coincidence. I said I went to Jersey this weekend. On the way there on Friday, I watched a movie called And So It Goes. It's not one of the more well-known of Rob Reiner's films, but it was really touching. It literally evoked tears, at the end for me. Maybe it was just me melancholy on the plane for some reason, but it was Michael Douglas, Diane Keaton, who also recently passed away. But the other thing about it, so I watched it on a Friday on the plane, and then Sunday this tragedy happens. So I believe that this was partly autobiographical because Michael Douglas plays a certain character and has a son that is struggling with drug addiction, that is struggling with a lot of the struggles that Rob Reiner's.
What do you think your favorite is then? Favorite Rob Reiner movie?
So, but they're so different though. So when Harry Met Sally definitely holds a special place in my heart. But I do like his political films. A Few Good Men is just so well written.
Yeah.
And it stands the test of time, as does American President. But I think if I had to pick just one, When Harry Met Sally, if you gave me a couple, because he crosses different genres,
It's
When
tough.
Harry Met Sally and A Few Good Men.
Yeah. For me, I think A Few Good Men is probably at the top
Yeah.
because of the intensity of the Jack Nicholson character in that
Yeah.
one. Cruise was good in that as well. I think Kevin Pollak was in that one
Man,
too. That
yeah.
was
Demi Moore. Yeah.
Demi Moore. I mean, that was quite a flick. I mean, I did love the movie that I happened to be in, the American President, because I love politics. It
Yeah.
was a very political, and again, kind of a righty lefty kind of a movie.
And that was the
That
predecessor in a lot of ways to The West Wing, which was such a successful TV
Well,
franchise.
so Aaron Sorkin was in The American President. There's a shot in the credits where
Yeah.
Sorkin's name is right above mine.
Oh, is that right?
Because he had a little bit part in the
Oh,
movie
that's
as well.
funny. Yeah, he wrote
So,
A Few Good Men, the
yeah,
screenplay for A Few Good Men, as well
yeah,
as The American President, didn't
yeah.
he?
I
Yeah.
believe he did, and
Yeah.
so he had a little bit part in it as well. But again, because I do like politics, and I think he always laid it out in such a non-threatening, matter-of-fact kind of a way, which he wasn't that way in person. He was very much the activist, very passionate about
Yeah.
how he felt. James Woods tells a story they're complete diametrically
Yeah.
opposed when it comes to politics, and Woods talked about how much he loved Reiner, and how important Reiner was to his own career, and how you can be on opposite ends of the spectrum and still both be patriots. That's the way he
Yeah.
described Reiner. So it says a lot about him, and boy, will he be missed. I mean,
He
he
sure
was
will.
always coming up with some wonderfully creative ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Listen, what makes this show great, we got to talk about something uplifting, about, something that was in a tragedy, and you had a chance to vent a little bit.
I did.
Some wonderful therapy, right?
It was. Thank you for that, Rick. You're a good pal.
You think so? Always my job. I know how hard it was for you when some of these deals went down regarding the Mets, and so you're right. We're still in the winter, and we got a lot of winter to go, right?
Wait till next year.
Time to say goodbye. I'm Rick Garcia. He's Corey Nathan. East meets West. Thanks for joining us.
Don't forget, let everyone know you can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your favorite podcast. This is great, Rick. Thank you.
You got it.
Baby got